drawn to it, sketching doodles in your textbooks. In the corners making animation flip books. Writing stories, then turn them into comics. Shucks, get out the clay, I'm a sculpt Garth Brooks. It doesn't matter how you create, cause you're drawn to it, drawn to it. It only matters you create when you're drawn to it, drawn to it. Get creative and flex imagination. Write a song, you might
We'll get into it. So welcome back to the podcast. Peter Breau, pretty renowned writer for here in St. John, definitely. And I'm glad to have you back as my first guest for the relaunch of Drawn to It podcast. So thank you.
Oh, cool. Thanks, Brian. The relaunch. Nice.
The relaunch. Yeah, 2.0.
Yeah. Congratulations on Ugwug.
Oh, thank you very much. It's
Go
ahead.
No, I've been following your posts on Facebook and stuff. It looks really cool. I've watched the trailer. You know,
very cool. Thank
I haven't
you.
had a chance to check it out on 5 yet. It's on 5 TV, right?
Yeah, Bell 5 TV 1. So you have to be a Bell subscriber to get it. But we did sign with a distributor, and I'll be making an announcement in the upcoming weeks about exactly who and what the launch plan is going to be. But it's going to get out there to the world, so I'm very happy about that. So, are you there? Oh no, you froze up.
Yeah, no, we're back.
Okay, there we go.
Yeah. You're going to edit it anyway, so.
Yeah, so did you hear any of what I just said?
I heard some of it. Now it froze up for a second.
Right. Okay, so what I was saying is we signed on with a distributor.
Yes.
And so in the next few weeks, I'm going to announce who and what their strategy is going to be for getting it out there to the world. So
nice. That's really cool.
Very happy about that. Thank you.
Yeah.
And thank you for checking out the trailer too. I appreciate that.
Yeah. No, I've been following it since you were posting about it. Geez, I think you started that project 2 years ago?
Well, started with a concept 2 years ago. Started filming just over a year ago.
Yeah.
And hopefully, the stars will align. There's a lot more story to tell. There's a whole universe I've written with different wugs that live in different parts of the world and
really?
Have different powers and that type of thing. So,
that's really cool.
Yeah. So now, but I mean, we're not here for me. We're here for you.
No. I know that. I know that. I just thought I'd ask about it.
I really appreciate that because, surprisingly, as a creative person, this is a good segue into one of my first questions for you. I find as a creative person here in New Brunswick, and particularly St. John and surrounding areas, that it is pretty much impossible to gain traction on anything you create. And I'm wondering if you share that perspective, and if you don't, what advice would you offer people?
Well, for me, I think I took some risks. I've explained on other podcasts, and I think on this one, in the last time we talked about, I was listening to CBC, and I heard about the Fundy Fan Fest, and they were having a character creation contest, and Bell Alliant was sponsoring it, and Heroes Beacon and Knuckle Down Studios and some other people. And I just took a chance. I said, yeah, I think maybe I can do this. And, I went in there and just kind of BS'd my way through it and actually won the contest. And it gave me a little bit of, confidence. And then I joined a group called the Fundy Comic Art Society, where I met some like-minded individuals and, built my confidence through there too. But St. John's, we're a fairly big city in New Brunswick, but not a big city worldwide. and we have a very vibrant art scene here, and a lot of talented people, right? You got Jimmy Hashie and Paul Beal and Hal Hilden and Jill and Jen and Jason from the Fundy Comic Arts, and I can just keep on naming them. Like but for me, what I had to do was, I networked. I started creating my own brand and getting out there on the internet and, doing I equate it to like professional wrestling, right? I heard the Undertaker's biography on a podcast, and he talks about how, he really didn't really want to be a wrestler, but he kind of went and he gave the money and went and through the paces with the trainer, and then went and sat every single day at this place waiting to be noticed. And every day he didn't get noticed. And then one day somebody called in sick, something like that, and they said, "Hey, you want to do it?" And he's like, "Yeah, I'll do it." And then he get out there and and then he just grinded and built a brand until, and then worked his way up through the ranks and did an awful lot of stuff for next to nothing. Like, you hear the stories, Stone Cold talking about, sleeping in his car, him and Mick Foley just making enough money to drive to the next high school gym. You know what I mean? And then wrestling there all day long. You know what I mean? Not making any money off the wrestling, but making money maybe off of a T-shirt or two that they sold, or maybe some bootleg video of the match. And I find independent comic books is kind of like that.
Yeah, definitely.
My name out there. I had to do a lot of stuff for free. I sent scripts to everybody who was willing to read them, and eventually you network and you meet some really good people. Like, I think the biggest push I got was I met Bradley Golden and Marcus Roberts, and Bradley liked my writing. Like, he was looking for people to write for his Mississippi Zombie title. And, I wrote.
So just to be clear for the audience, you do a lot of writing for independent comic books, and
Yes.
And some of them have gained quite a bit of traction too.
Yes.
Like, last time we spoke, you were hopeful that These Damned Kids would gain some traction.
Yes.
And I think since we last spoke, and it's gained a lot of traction.
Yes. These Damn Kids actually was the 34th best-selling comic in Diamond, like Diamond charts, the 34th best-selling comic in February of 2022. And it also sold out the first issue. It's in second print now. And it was nominated for Sequential Magazine Canadian Independent Comic Book of the Year. We didn't win, but we got nominated. It's just honored. Just to be noticed was cool. You know what I mean? And so that's where we're at.
That's what I love. I love that, because the reboot of this podcast is all about focusing the spotlight on New Brunswick and St. John creative people. And like, who would know, when you drive through St. John, you have no idea that there's somebody who is, making a first-time TV show that features CGI, or a comic book writer who's been, gained awards and been nominated for various awards. And there's famous actors here and script writers.
Yep.
And, the list goes on and on. Are you as frustrated as a lot of us are with the lack of provincial support that creative people get?
To be completely honest with you, I've never really looked into it. I've seen posts from other people who in other provinces have gotten, like they've gotten, grants and stuff to do like trade paperbacks. I know the guy that created Aurora Man. I can't come up with his name right off the top of my head. Jeff Burton, I think, is his name. he got a grant, like an $8,000 grant, I think, to do Aurora Man. And, you know, his stuff is fantastic. Like, you know, he deserves to get a grant. And I think he lives in Manitoba. Now I could be wrong with a lot of this stuff because it's right off the top of my head, but I'm not even aware if there is any programs in St. John or New Brunswick.
Yeah, and to my knowledge, and based on my research, there isn't really. There's one sort of program for filmmakers that is kind of a very hard process to go through, and in terms of filmmaking in general, and you know, this sort of applies to you as well because of your script writing and stuff. It's really hard to get any kind of traction on a production here in the province because we don't have, as of yet, we don't have tax credit programs that make it look enticing. And there are quite a few of us who are looking around at our brother and sister provinces, PEI, Nova Scotia, and even up to Newfoundland, who are really going out of their way to make the creative industry, whatever branch of that it might take. It could be the script writing route, filmmaker route, music, all that. They're really putting efforts out there to cultivate it and grow it up. They see it as a resource, and it's just baffling to me and to many others how New Brunswick is just doing nothing.
Now, are they doing nothing because they don't have the funding, or are they doing nothing because nobody's ever asked? Like, I'm not sure.
Lots of people have asked. People have asked, and I'm not a political person really, so I don't know enough of the information to say what they do and don't have funding for. But you know, there are lots of more educated artists who will make posts online about, you know, checks being written for this and that when they feel maybe a little bit of honeypot could be made to help a particular group of artists. So it isn't even necessarily about the money per se. It's the government right now doesn't seem to have options for artists to like there are programs out there for entrepreneurship and that type of thing, but they really favor and cater to the more trades or white collar business type things, and they don't necessarily if you're an artist, a creative, because I've tried for some of these, if you don't fit the mold perfectly, right, where somebody who might be a tradesperson or a more traditional business person would fit the mold more perfectly, you get dismissed very quickly.
Wow.
So yeah, it would just be nice to see, if not necessarily from a financial point of view, but just sort of a recognition that.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Recognition.
Yeah, exactly. And not that we need people saying, "Oh, you're so fantastic." It's not that. Just that there is such a natural resource in this province of creative people from all levels. I mean, one of my favorite sculptors on the planet lives right here in St. John, Melissa Kennedy. She's amazing.
Wow.
And look her up. I mean, you'll be floored. Right here in St. John. And you know, we are as creatives, I think it's fair to say we're a resource for the province.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely,
and
a resource.
Yeah, and it'd just be cool to see them trying to figure out how they might go about using us, I guess. if that makes sense.
No,
I don't
so
know.
what a sense.
Yeah, I don't know, but I mean, I say a whole bunch of stuff, and it really, I draw cartoons, so take it with a grain of salt.
Yeah, and I write them.
But no,
That's
can you talk about your experience on These Damn Kids? Because has it not even sort of gotten close to being picked up for television stuff?
Well, we did a couple of years ago. We signed a contract with Spirit Rider Productions, out of Australia, and the director was Brian Vaughan, and he's an award-winning director, known a lot in that area, not super well known in North America, but we haven't. There hasn't been much. There hasn't been much since. I signed a contract with them, and Bradley signed. And we haven't really heard much from them since then. There's been some snags with These Damn Kids, like Helmut Racco, the artist for issue 1, lives in the Philippines. We had COVID, and then there was some natural disasters that took place in the Philippines, and some other things that happened where Helmut had to kind of back away from the comic book. Yeah. So then, the search was on, and kudos to Bradley and Marcus. They're the ones that, they sought out and vetted a new artist. So we do have issue 2's coming out May 31st. It's complete. Like I said, they vetted a new artist, and they sent me some of the the test pages from them, and and we all agreed as a group, to take him on as an artist, and and he drew the comic book, and then we sent it off to be lettered, and it's lettered now. It's at the printer. No, that's my phone, I think, and it's it's at the printers now. Mm-hmm. So we just have to wait for a bit.
That's a huge deal to get one issue done, let alone 2. I don't know how many people out there have tried to make their own comic book, but I'm still only halfway through my first issue of Chicken Mecha Turtle, and it's so much work. And when you're doing it from a position of labor of love, so there's no budget, right?
Yes.
It can very quickly end up becoming kind of the first thing that gets sacrificed on the priority list as life throws curveball after curveball at you. So, I think it's great you got 2 issues done.
Yeah,
that's
and
a big deal.
I had a lot to do in between. Like we've had, Harvest of Horrors 2 came out, and it was 7 weeks in the top 100 on Amazon, and Mississippi Zombie 3 came out, and it debuted number 1 on Amazon.ca, and debuted number 3 on Amazon US. So that was nice to see, right? And I've been working on some other titles, like Deliver Us from Evil title that I'm doing with Mattia Doggini. We did a successful Kickstarter campaign last month. We raised more than what we were planning on raising, so we raised 130% of our budget, and that comic is print ready. Like, it's actually there's a variant cover there for the.
Yeah, look at that. That's cool.
This is actually the and that cover is by Stefano Cardicelli. He's a Bram Stoker award-winning artist out of Italy. Mattia's from Italy too. And Stefano does all my covers for Deliver Us from Evil. Like, the issue 1 is complete, print ready. issue 2 is, well, yeah, I just, it's right there.
Yeah.
And issue 2 is penciled. It just needs to be inked and lettered, and we have the cover for it. I did another title too called Mud and Madness, which is stories of World War I with my son. There's a
Oh, wow.
there's a hard copy of it too, right there, and that's also a Stefano Cardicelli cover. And I brought some of those with me to the Big Country Comic Expo in Fredericton. I was a featured guest back in November, and I brought some copies of the Mud and Madness, and just to see, see how well I sold out. I sold out immediately, and I had people emailing me afterwards and messaging me looking for copies.
That's so cool.
Yeah, it's a World War I comic that my son and I. There's actually 2 issues. Like issue 1 is complete. Issue 2, the artist for issue 1 is Brian Makish, and the artist for issue 2 is Alessio Nocerino. And Alessio is another Italian artist does a lot of really good work. He's got some projects coming out soon with Ben Dunn, and he's got some other projects with Bradley Golden, and he does covers for Jungle Comics for Antarctic Press. And Alessio's, he's top-notch artist. He did issue 2 for us, and they're issue 1 is two stories. Issue 2 is 1 continuous story, and they revolve around the same characters. There's Ernest Chapman and George South, and a character I created called Piker. And Piker was created actually, like, if can review back a little, I wrote a story for the Fundy Comic Art Society, and Monique McNaughton drew it. And I think I've talked about this before, and the Edgar Rice Burroughs estate kind of found out about it. They wanted, they were sending me a cease and desist letter. It was actually, hey, we like this. Can we archive a few copies? I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe this, right? The creator of cards wants my work, right? And this is like this would be my second real comic story. My first was Starbolt that I did with Willie Reed and James Hatchie and Monique McNaughton. But the first other one, we are doing a library fundraiser for the Fundy Comic Arts, and we were selling it at the Bog City ComicCon. And they found out about it and wanted a copy. And
how did that happen? How does it go from a small scale St. John Comic-Con to their estate?
I'm not really sure. That's something that I did an interview after the fact with the morning show here, and that was one of the questions they asked Monique and I brought Jill Davis LeBlanc with me too. She ran the Funny Comic Art Society. I think she still does. And, that was one of the questions that we were asked, and we really weren't quite sure how if somebody just seen it, on, like, she said that a lot of people actually check out the Funny Comic Arts page, like the CBC does. That's how the CBC contacted me, was they had seen it. I had posted about how the Edgar Rice Burroughs estate, and they had seen that post, and then they contacted me, right? So they had seen the post. Now, I'm not sure how the Edgar Rice Burroughs estate found out about it, but
it's incredible. And again, one of these weird St. John connections, and there are so many of those.
And the interesting thing is, I was thinking, this is going to be a cease and desist, right? Because the Dynamite Entertainment had a comic book called Lord of the Jungle, which suspiciously looked a lot like Tarzan, and they were told to cease and desist, right? Edgar Rice Burroughs is pretty, they're pretty protective of their properties, right? So I'm thinking, okay, well, cease and desist, whatever. Sure, no problem, man. But it wasn't that. It was like, hey, we're going to we want to archive the story. Now Tarzan was in it, but I didn't actually use Tarzan as Tarzan. I called him Lord Greystoke because Lord Greystoke was actually, not really trademarked, right? With the
Right.
same way Tarzan was, but it was still Tarzan, right? Like if you read the
Right.
story, he still acts like Tarzan, right? But that story also created a character called Piker, and if you read the story, like Tarzan's at the Reverse and Falls Bridge. He's there with his wife. In the Tarzan mythos, Jane, her dad was an engineer, so she would have an interest in seeing the Reverse and Falls Bridge being built because it was a pretty big deal at the time.
Yeah.
And they were traveling with, because internet's an amazing thing. You can find out a lot. You can do a lot of homework with it. So I found out
Yeah.
that there actually was a world tour going on at the time, that the Reverse and Falls Bridge was being built. And so I said, well, why not? Why wouldn't George V have maybe visited here, right? So, of course, one of the people in his party was Lord Greystoke, right? So they show up to the Reverse and Falls Bridge, and something's happening. There's like a giant squid in there attacking people. Tarzan attacks a squid.
So cool.
This piker guy picks up this logging pike and throws it at the squid so that Tarzan can actually win. It throws it to Tarzan, I think it is, and then Tarzan wins. So then they start calling him Piker, right? So, but this character, I've actually put him in other stories now. So we've written these World War I stories that feature George South and Ernest Chapman. These are actual World War I veterans that actually lived. And Piker is this guy that he's like a Forrest Gump. He just kind of appears in all these different,
Right. Yeah.
world changing events, right? So yeah, so in the first issue, they take on Dracula in this story called Not Beast, and then the second issue they take on, during World War II, there was roving bands of cannibals that lived in no man's land, and there was one time, or World War I story, there was one time during World War I where they actually, in northern Belgium, they stopped the war because there were so many wolves that were coming out and actually attacking the soldiers and stuff, that the Germans and the Canadians had a truce so that they would deal with the wolves instead of each other.
Right.
So my son,
I actually remember that story,
Yes.
and I only heard it recently.
Yeah.
I can't remember where.
So Jaden, he's really, like, he's super big in World War I history and stuff like that. So he's the one, he comes up for the Mud and Madness comics. It's like the whole title is Mud and Madness, Tales of the Great War. He comes up with the plots. I just put in the words.
Yeah.
So he come up with the plot for, well, the Knock Feast one I did, but for the Carnus Nocturnus, the one with the wolves and the cannibals. And that actually is going in issue 3. We're going to expand more on the cannibals and stuff like that. But issue 1 and issue 2 are complete at the moment. Issue 1's
your flavor tends to skew very horror, gore, kind of, not necessarily family circus, right? Like you're very much into the real in your face kind of graphic stuff.
Yeah. For now, like the stuff that I've written so far has mostly been zombie, or it's been World War I, historical, supernatural. Like we throw in a lot of Easter eggs. We try to keep it as real as possible in the World War I stuff. Like Alessio will send a page for us to look at, and Jaden will say, no, that telephone's wrong, or that, you know what I mean, in the background, or that, that rifle. They wouldn't have used that rifle in World War I. They would have used that, like that's like 1922 or something, right? So there'll be little changes like that, but he tries to keep it. He wants it as authentic with the supernatural flair, of course, right?
Right.
But and then deliver
a great genre. To combine the time period piece with supernatural is great.
And These Damn Kids is horror. But when I first started, like the first, like, Starbolt wasn't a horror comic. Starbolt, like I did with Sashi and Willie Reed and Monique McNaught, and that was superhero. And then I wrote some superhero for Antarctic Press. The Ghost, Lady
Yeah.
Claw. That was superhero, right? It was a reimagining of the Ghost character from the 1940s in the 2020s. But then like I said, I wrote a script for Bradley Golden, and he liked it, and then he hired me on for Mississippi Zombie, and I've had my work's been published in Mississippi Zombie since, and then in Harvest of Horrors, and those are both horror titles, so I tend to lean more towards horror for those titles. But and with the Deliver Us from Evil, that's more of an X-Files type story. It's more conspiracy based. There's some horror element to it, but it's mostly more like things like Montauk and Kecksburg and
I love that stuff. Yeah,
the Nazi Bell at Die Glock and like there's like this ancient cult in it, and and I don't want to go too much into it because I don't want to spoil issue 2, but
so
it's
all these titles that you've been talking about, are the majority of them available at the St. John Comic Shop Heroes Beacon?
Well, not at the moment because they've all sold out. Like when these damn kids hit.
That's a good problem to have.
I think you can probably pick up a copy of Starbolt there, but like the Mississippi Zombie, all the Antarctic Press stuff, all the Caliber stuff, that stuff sells out as soon as it hits the stands, right? Which is not a bad thing, right?
No, that's a great thing.
It's and I've seen them in other stores. I've seen them, like I've been in Moncton and Fredericton, and actually, interestingly enough, we were in Quebec City, Kelly and I, back for our 25th wedding anniversary back in September, and I ran into a copy of These Damn Kids in Quebec City, in a comic book store in Quebec City, and there was a copy of that and a copy of Harvest of Horrors 1, so I'm like,
cool.
oh, this is really cool, right? And we've gotten like messages from people like Black's Cleric. Simon Moore is his name, but he goes by Black's Cleric. He said writer, critic for comic books. He lives in the UK, and he buys our stuff. Like, he's got copies of my comic that he's picked up in stores there, and the people in Australia are buying it, and people, wherever you sell comic books, or Diamond can ship them, they'll, copies, are there to be. Now, like I said, the first issue did sell out, so it's in second print now.
That's great.
And
good problem to have. Problem to have.
Any copy of Mississippi Zombie or any copy of Harvest of Horrors, you can pick up on Amazon. They're still available on Amazon and Barnes and Noble.
Well, this is what I love hearing, because, like, I understand the people who might be listening to the podcast or watching it on YouTube. You're throwing out a lot of names and that type of thing, and they're not going to know, probably the bulk of them, the bulk of the audience is not going to know who these people are. But the main point here is you, as a creator, sort of the main thing that this podcast is meant to shine light on. You, as a creator, a dream chaser from St. John, a city that isn't necessarily dripping with creative opportunities in a mainstream way. You've reached a level in your industry where you're being published worldwide.
Yes.
People from all around the world have access to your work. And sure, maybe people listening right now, they're like, but I'm not a comic book fan. That's not the point, right? The point is, a creative person had a dream from here in St. John, a New Brunswicker had a dream and went for it. And went for it in a big bad way, and you're reaping the rewards of that. Now, you said you took a lot of risk, but I imagine it has a great deal to do with the persistence as well, right?
Oh yes, yes, that goes along with the story about Stone Cold and the Undertaker and all
Yeah.
them. Can you
Which is
imagine?
a great analogy, by the
Yeah,
way. Even if you don't watch wrestling today, you're talking about the ultimate. You're willing to put your body through beating after beating to pursue a dream. I can't think of a better metaphor of a dream chaser than somebody who wants to blow up and be the next Rock or Hulk Hogan, that type of thing,
that makes
because
a lot of work.
everything's stacked against you.
Yeah, and like it's not like there's a lot of competition because there is, right?
Yeah.
You know, now for like in my case, I there's some elements of luck involved too, right? Did I chase it? Yeah. Did I put a lot of work into it? Yes. Did I but meeting the right people, being willing to. One of the things that I heard Ben Dunn say one time, because he was being interviewed by I can't remember I think it's called Graphic Histories podcast out of Nova Scotia, and my name came up, and he said, he said one of the things he said I admire about him was that when he says he's going to do it, he does it. If he says he's going to have a script in by Thursday, he has a script in by Thursday. If he says he's going to submit this, he submits it, right?
Yeah.
And that's what I try to be true to that. I try to meet deadlines. I try to, if I'm going to do something, I try my hardest to get it done, right? That's just like with the Deliver Us from Evil comic. We made sure that everything was done and print ready before we ever went to Kickstarter. Because one of the things that my own pet peeves about Kickstarter is that I've backed a lot of campaigns, and there's some campaigns I've backed, I still haven't got the comic book. And it's been like, sometimes I've waited up to 2 years before I got the comic. Now you back them in like January of 2020 and you get the comic in March of 2023 or something. That's a long time, right? You completely forget about it too by then, right? So one of the things that we wanted to do for like with our Kickstarter was we wanted to make sure that the comic was print ready, that we can have it to people when we say we're going to have it to people. Now there was my first Kickstarter campaign, so there's a learning curve, and like I wasn't 100% sure how Kickstarter did everything, and they hold stuff for a while and stuff like that, right? But so everything
there's far as quite a lot to it.
Yeah, we're good to go. Everything, all the rewards will be in people's hands by the end of May, and we promise 1st of June. So what we're just waiting on right now is a printer, right?
Yeah,
and sometimes that takes a little longer than I thought it would.
Yeah,
and we might actually even go local for the printer.
Oh, that would be so cool.
Yeah.
Probably not the most cost effective, but definitely the coolest thing.
Because I've been talking with Print 3, Mike at Print 3.
Yep.
And he's
St. John Printing Company.
Yeah, and I've talked with Mattia about it. And we're seriously thinking of going local with it. And keeping it in the province, because like I could go through an American company, like a lot of people who do Kickstarters use, there's a couple American companies that they use. And I thought with the difference in the exchange and the shipping costs, if it cost me 50 cents more an issue to keep it in St. John, I might as well keep it here,
Yeah. Oh man, that'd be so cool. We need more of that. A lot of creative people feel the need to leave to pursue their creative dream, right? And at some point, many of us feel the call to come back home. And depending on what our creative area might be, you could be coming home to a whole new perspective on your journey with plenty of opportunity, or you could be coming home to a different type of barren kind of desert wasteland of, and I've seen it happen both ways, but it would be cool. The more we can get things to stay here, the better. I
agree.
I really think that's what we need. Yeah.
But with the internet, like, if I was to have done this 30 years ago, I don't even know if I could have, because I'd have to write scripts. I'd have to mail them or fax them to somebody somewhere. Then they'd have to mail or fax back the pages. And then you'd look over the pencils to make sure that, they kind of match because, if something's changed, if there's a language barrier and you're working with somebody that their first language isn't English, and then, if something's changed in the panel, maybe I look at it and say, wow, that's better than what I thought. Like, that's a good panel, right? Now I may have to readjust the narrative, or I may have to readjust the dialogue to fit the panel. And I don't mind doing that, because I've gotten pages back from Mattia and from Helmut and from Alessio and Benito and different artists that I work with that are so much better than the way I described it on the page, right? Well, one of the examples is that we have a 2-page spread in Deliver Us from Evil comic, and Simon Moore, Black's Cleric is his writing name. When he reviewed the comic book, he really was taken by this 2-page spread, and he said the 2-page spread alone was worth the price of the comic book. And I wholeheartedly agree, but the story behind that was it was never supposed to be a 2-page spread. It was supposed to be separate pages.
Right.
And I had it set up so that on this page was like this, and another page, and I had 4 panels per page. And Mattia messaged me back and says, what would be really cool if we did this in a 2-page spread. I can do a 2-page spread. I can encompass all 8 panels in those 2 pages, and I can make it, and actually it's a dissension page, and it turned out fantastic. You know what I mean? A lot better than what I ever would have thought of, right?
Well, I mean, that's the benefit of collaboration. One idea pluses the next, and you keep kind of one-upping each other, but all in the interest of a better project.
Absolutely, and
that's how it should be.
Yeah, and that's the way I look at it. I'm open-minded, where like it's the finished product that I care about. I don't care about if something's changed, right? If it helps with the pacing or with the story, sure, why not, right?
Yeah.
But the amazing thing is that we could do that in a day. Like he reads the script, he pencils out the pages, and he says, no, wait a minute, let me change that, make that a 2-page spread, sends me the 2-page spread. I look at it and say, wow, this is fantastic. You know what I mean? Like, geez, man, this is better than I ever dreamt it would be. Send it back to him. Right now, if this was 30 years ago, he would have been sending it to me in the mail or whatever. I'd have to mail it back, So that's why.
And hope it didn't get damaged.
Right? You know what I mean? Thank God for the internet, that I can just,
Speaking of technology, the artists you work with, are they working digitally? Like on one of these, a Wacom tablet type digital interface where they're drawing right on it, or are they old school doing a Jim Lee style and still on the paper with the pencils and ink and that type of thing?
Interestingly enough, some of it is digital and some of it is old school. I worked with an artist out of PEI, Arden Belfry, and he did all of his old school.
Wow.
He did it all
Wow.
on, on the boards, right? You know what I
Love
mean?
that. Yeah.
And Benito that I work with, he lives in Texas. He does it all old school. I know Ben Dunn does his old school,
Hmm.
and Alessio I know is digital. Mattia, his is all old school. He draws it all out. He's got the drawing table. He draws it all out first, and then, I'm I'm kind of I don't have a whole lot of knowledge of what happens next after he draws it. I don't know if you put it in a scanner, or if you maybe take a picture of it and then put it on the screen and then digitize it. I don't know how any of that stuff happens, but
Yeah.
no.
No, it's I find I draw mostly digital now, although I'm about to get back into the old school stuff. I just went to Michael's today and bought some outrageously priced art supplies. But the only spot I can find them for what I was looking for. But I'm about to get back into the pencil on paper stuff. But most of the illustrators I talk to now are digital, just because of the quickness. Like, you can save a file and pump it immediately to the next part of the pipeline, instantaneous. And it's been around forever. I mean, when I was working at Disney like 10, 11 years ago now, it when I started there was the first time I ever got to draw on a giant Cintiq like this. And it was just like one of those moments where my mind was just blown. And but ever since, I mean, you get spoiled because there are a lot of cheats and shortcuts that can come with this that are, help you get to that deadline a little bit quicker. It doesn't, you don't get anything for free. You still have to draw it. You still have to know how to draw.
Absolutely.
It's just you can accomplish a certain type of thing faster. It's just a tool,
Exactly.
But I love that a lot of your books are being done old school. I think that's great.
But see, I cheat too. I use the internet to look things up. I use the internet to, and
Well, yeah, I mean, you got a whole library right
the
here
internet,
in the
yeah,
palm of your
yeah.
hand.
The internet spell checks my stuff, and
Yeah.
and
Yeah. So
oh,
there
I
are equivalencies there. So
yeah,
yeah, you get it. But
do have
yeah. So
Grammarly, but it's like I write old school. I use, like, that's how I write. You know what I mean?
yeah.
Right? I write everything down with, I come up with an idea. I write it down on a old school ruled notebook, and you know what I mean? And just write messy things in the corners and whatever. And what I find really cool is when I go back and look at something that I wrote maybe 2 or 3 years ago, just as a note or whatever, and like, wow, I actually wrote that. I can't believe it, right?
Yeah.
My twin and I have been working on a plot to a story that we're going to be doing. It's a sword and sorcery one. Like,
Yeah.
I've been talking with the guy who has like the sword, and remember an old movie called The Sword and the Sorcerer?
Yep.
Yeah. And now Antarctic Press just got the rights to publish
Okay.
some comic books based on the Sword and the Sorcerer franchise.
Yeah.
And
I love that genre of
yeah,
fantasy stuff. Love it.
yeah. Well, my brother and I are like, I'm mostly the one who's in talks with one of the people who's like with that franchise, right? We've been talking the last few days, so I sent him a pitch, to see what he thinks, So maybe I might be writing, instead of horror, might be writing sword and sorcery instead.
Oh, that'd be cool. It seems like you've got no shortage of projects to take up your time, and I sincerely hope, and I have felt this way for a while because I follow you on Facebook as well. You and Hal are probably two of my favorite people to follow. You're two of the nicest people and most gracious with sharing excitement with other creative people. Very selfless, and you're applauding other people's achievements, and I love that, and I try to model my own behavior after that too. And Hal is the same way. As I really hope in the future we can work on a project together, because I think that would be amazing.
That'd be really cool. Yeah, Hal's going to be featured guest at East Coast Comic Expo this year.
Saw that.
Yeah,
long overdue.
Yeah. He was at Big Country Comic Expo, and he was a featured guest there too. Back in November, he was a couple tables down from me, him and Andrew Clark. It's the first time I'd met Andrew
Clark. There's another guy.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I just got a copy of his Adam comic there. He sent me a copy from his Kickstarter. Really good stuff, very good guy, Yeah. And, the first time I'd ever met him was I knew him from an online presence, but I'd never physically met him, And Hal, I knew Hal from here, from Fog City ComicCon and from an online presence, and I was really happy to see that, that he's going to be because I'm going to be a featured guest at East Coast Comic Expo also. So it'll be good to, there's going to be 2 St. Johners there now that I know of,
That's great. Yeah. That's
infiltrating the Moncton scene and,
Awesome. Well, we're just about at the end here. Before I let you go, I'd like to ask 2 questions. One of them, first one, is there a person in St. John that you've wanted to work with but not had the chance?
Well, let's bring up Hal. I'd love to work with Hal. I'd love to co-write something with Hal. I gladly do that. I've worked with Paul Beal. Paul and I wrote a script together for a kind of a Rocket Robin Hood tribute thing, and it hasn't been penciled or anything yet. It's still in the working stages, and I've worked with Jimmy, Jimmy's old school, he inks old school. Worked with Willie Reed. I've worked with all the people at the Fundy Comic Arts,
And
so
by the way, Willie Reed, so talented.
Yep.
Really nice guy. He and I have done a coffee and sketch together ages ago, and I love how passionate he is about his artwork. So my second question, and this might be kind of tricky, but since the relaunch of this podcast is about shining spotlight on St. John talent, or New Brunswick talent specifically, who should I set my target on next to try to be a guest? Who would you like to shine a little light on? Has to be a creative person. Creative person here in New Brunswick, or just St. John? Yeah, New Brunswick, St. John, it's all up for grabs.
You know who you should try to get on is Jenny Godin.
Mm-hmm.
Jenny Godin, like her,
super
she's
talented.
Working on a webcomic right now with some people out of Montreal. They were nominated for a Sequential Award, and she's got some work. Her and Paul Beal, they did a couple of stories with Antarctic Press for Jungle Comics, and her art is it's really good stuff, and like I don't know Jenny very well. I know her from the Fundy Comic Arts meetings and stuff, but I haven't. With COVID, the meetings kind of stopped, and
have they picked back up?
Yes, they are.
Yeah.
actually, I think there might even be one this weekend. They had a couple of meets where you like to just go and hang out. But see, the thing is with me is like I'm a nurse by day and, comic book person at other times. And like I work 16-hour shifts and, like the meetings happen to fall on Saturday mornings. I work Friday into Saturday. So like I'll go to work like tomorrow at 4, I'll work until 8 o'clock. And at sometimes like before, like 5 years ago when I joined the group, like, I would just struggle through and go there with like, no sleep in 30 hours. Right. But I find it's a little
brutal.
more right. So, and it just so happens, and I this is no excuse, right? But it just so happens that, the meetings just happen to be on like, the weekends that I work Friday into Saturday. Right. So, one of these times I will, trudge in, but like I said, COVID did kind of cancel it for quite some time,
Yeah. The great pause button.
Yeah, she'd be a great one to talk.
I'll reach out to her.
Super
100%.
talented.
I reached out to her before in the past during the first iteration of this podcast, and she was quite reluctant. So hopefully I can change her mind.
Yeah, she might be shy. I know she might be humble about people, and but you have others. There's like Giselle Agassi, Bathurst, and Nick Bradshaw, and you've got and if you're looking in the Maritimes, you've got Jed McKay in Halifax. You've got Ed Brisson in Halifax and Tony White in Halifax, and so the Maritimes got quite the talent pool. You got Jimmy here, that's been in the comic scene for 40 plus years. Paul, who's been in the comic scene. Hal, they're seasoned veterans. And then you got some new people coming up through the ranks too, right? Like Jimmy's got some new people doing some work with him. Like he has this guy that wrote a Starbolt story for him. I think his name's Randy Wood. And he's brand new. Jimmy's kind of like a talent scout, right? Found this guy. I don't know. He's local, and there's another guy, I think Tony Wood. I think he does some art. He's local. There's a lot of, you were saying earlier, there's a lot of talent here. There's a lot of hidden talent too.
Well, and that's I want to try to shine some light on the people that are hidden, not because they choose to be. That's different, right? A lot of people, like you said, are shy. They like to just, do their thing, and that's fine. But there are a lot of people that can provide a story that others can get inspired from to keep going in their journey. And I find I'm like that. I listen to podcasts that have all types of different creative people, actors, and even wrestlers you were talking about. I love hearing underdog type stories, people who have overcome to achieve their dream, the journey of chasing down that dream when maybe the entire world seems against you. If friends and family are saying, hey, listen, we know you think you're going to achieve this, but get real. I like hearing stories about people who hear that and say, I'm going to show you, like the more you tell me don't do it, I'm going to go do it. So,
absolutely.
That's sort of the what I want for this relaunch of the podcast, to bring those stories out there. So yeah, anyway, well, we're at the end of it, Peter, and thank you very much for being on. I hope you'll come back on.
Can I just do a shameless plug?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, These Damn Kids 2, available worldwide. May 31st. Deliver Us from Evil 1, and will be hopefully in stores in September worldwide. Mud Madness 1, we're going to do a Kickstarter launch probably after we fulfill Deliver Us from Evil 1's launch in June. So we'll do a Kickstarter for that. Now that I have some experience with Kickstarter, and I'll be a featured guest at Miracon in the Miramichi on May 6th. Troy Little's going to be there. Tony White's going to be there. Brenda Hickey, Troy Little of Rick and Morty fame, Brenda Hickey and Brenda Hickey, Brenda Little of the My Little Pony fame, going to be there. Sandy Crothers is going to be there. I'm going to be there. And then I'll be at ECCE as a featured guest in June 9th and 10th. Jed McKay is going to be there. Nick Bradshaw is going to be there. Hal's going to be there. Yeah. Troy Little's going to be there. Brenda Little so far on the guest list. And then I'm going to be a featured guest for the Freddie Beach Fan Fest, August 19th and 20th. Not sure who's on the guest list there right now, but I'm one of the featured guests. Yeah. And so that's it for. And we also, I've heard rumors that Fog City, where there's going to be a Fog City ComicCon this year in St. John, early June. That's all I know. I haven't seen any posts about it. So
that's great. I'm hoping to enter my name in the lottery for setting up. So
yeah, last year I entered my name in and I got it, and then I realized that I thought, wow, my content is a little graphic, and it's, and I really thought about it, and I thought, there's a lot of, kids that are going to be here, and a lot of, and like Willie Reed made me this really fantastic banner. You know what I mean? But it's a Stefano Cartaselli art, and it's really graphic, right? It's great for something like, ECCE, but I thought, wow, with all these kids and parents, should I really be promoting this? So I backed out of it. I backed out that recently. Like I'll do a panel or something where I'll sit in but I'm kind of iffy about, because like we were talking earlier, a lot of it is right now what I do is, over the top graphic horror and war and stuff like that. Is that something I really should have promoted at something like, a library event, Yeah.
No, I get it. It's hard to know where, especially with a Comic-Con type setup, what the demographic is going to be. And you're right. Some of them skew more older adult kind of stuff. And you probably made the right call.
It's free, and it's basically library oriented, right? So, I noticed from the 2 or 3 years that I'd been there previously, just, as a guest, and not as a guest, but like as a patron. And then one year we were there as representing Funny Comic Arts Society. Actually, I did for 2 years in a row representing Funny Comic Arts. And the bulk of the people there were, children and, young adults. And I'm like, maybe this isn't the right, Yeah. So I think I made the right decision.
I get it. Yeah, probably. Anyway. Okay, well, I will reach out to you. This will come out within the next day or two, and I'll reach out to you between now and then for a little bit of information to go in the write-up.
Sure.
And I'm super grateful. Thank you.
No, thank you. Thank you for, I'm honored to be on the first, the relaunch.
We're back, baby.
Yeah.
I don't know to what effect, but it's a labor of love. So we'll get everybody's dream chasing story out there, and maybe in some small way, all these stories will be a drop in the bucket to help, the water level rise for everybody.
Absolutely.
Inspire people.
Absolutely.
So, yeah. So, and it all starts with your story. So thank you.
Thanks, Brian. Thanks.
All right.
And
We'll talk
congratulations
soon. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Raising up some pigs in a pig pen, or be a stand-up comedian. It doesn't matter how you create, cause you're drawn to it, drawn to it.